Welcome back to another week of the PBO Pokemon Battle Organization. Of course, a Pokemon draft style format on Showdown. Of course, we are continuing to go over the games of the Kalos Division. We are currently on week 6, as well as as I'm recording this, are actively in week 7. We'll also go over playoffs at the end. Make sure to check out the timestamps, so whether you actually want to watch the battles or you want to watch the reviews of me doing the mistakes. Of course, all the criticism and the critique of these battles is not meant to be personal at all. It is only to benefit the players and is not meant to be rude or hurtful in any way. Again, actively going on week 7, and I also apologize that this is a little bit late because I've been very busy with school stuff and working a lot. So yeah, I've been very busy, but yeah, without any more further excuses, let's go ahead and get started. I also will be talking about playoffs again at the end of this, but we'll talk about that whenever we get there. And of course, we also will be going over the playoffs whenever they do happen. So let's start with game numero uno. We have the Mojave Cacturnes in the top right with their team roster against the Sonoran Pikachus in the bottom left. So let's, their team roster is also in the bottom right, as you can see. So let's go ahead and get right into this. As we see a lead Sableye for the Sonoran Pikachus into the Hippowdon lead by Mojave Cacturnes. We see a double actually on Decidueye. So Hippowdon could go for Stealth Rocks or Earthquakes, and does decide to go for Earthquake. Gets decent chip on Decidueye, as well as the Sandstorm is doing some damage. We actually see Swords Dance from Decidueye, which is crazy, while Stealth Rock up right in front of the Decidueye is a very bold move by the Hippowdon here. We are going to see Hippowdon switch out into Magneton. Decidueye going for a Leaf Blade with a crit does 46%. It's really not that much damage, to be honest. We can also see the following turn that Decidueye actually has Roost to get it back up to good health, but maybe not a good way of hitting this Magneton. Magneton does try to go for a Thunder Wave, trying to cripple this Decidueye, but does unfortunately miss. Decidueye going for another Swords Dance, as Magneton does go for another Thunder Wave. And then we see after the Thunder Wave that Magneton is going to be faster now. So Flash Cannon doing 44%. Decidueye unfortunately paralyzed, and then paralyzed again the following turn, most likely Shadow Sneak to hit Magneton here. But that double paralysis is going to be a little bit unfortunate because you are missing out on a little chip damage on Magneton. But Magneton does take out Decidueye with a Flash Cannon. You're going to see Tauros Paldea Blaze come out on the Magneton. Hippo now being switched out, does take a Raging Bull, really does not take that much damage. Following that, we're going to see the Tauros switch out into Namorous T, as Hippowdon actually goes for a really good play and Whirlwinding it out. Samurott ends up being let out, which has been unfortunate, but they do miss a Ceaseless Edge, so that is one benefit to the Mojave Cacturnes. They take a little bit less damage there, and the spikes don't go up. So at this point, they could potentially 2-hit KO with an Earthquake. They decide to go for another Earthquake here, and then yeah, even with the Sand Chip, it's pretty nice as well. We do see that Samurott does get 2 Ceaseless Edges off, and then Whirlwinds it actually out, but we do see Cerulege is actually Heavy Duty Boots, so it doesn't matter. We see Cerulege actually go for Tera Grass, so it resists the Earthquake, and then a Swords Dance, and then we can see Hippowdon actually going for a Slack Off here. Following this, we see a Tera Blast do 92% to that defensive Hippo. Hippo does decide to Whirlwind it out. Tauros comes back in, which is a bit unfortunate because obviously Hippo is going to die here, but they do decide to switch out into Dachshund and take the Raging Bull, which they are immune to, giving them +2 defense boost. We're going to see Tauros double out here into Samurott as a sack, and then we're going to see a player fail from the Dachshund. Namorous T comes out again, also Heavy Duty Boots. Hippo is going to be the sack as the Namorous actually gets up Tailwind. T-Tar comes out, most likely threatening with a Stone Edge, but actually we see Moonblast on Namorous T, and then T-Tar actually going for Thunder Wave to get off the paralysis, pretty important. Then we see a double into Magneton, does take that spike chip damage, meaning it's going to be taking quite a bit from Moonblast, Moonblast being a 2-hit KO now, and that special attack drop is very unfortunate because it means that they're guaranteed to live the next Flash Cannon, but it turns out even with the paralysis, Magneton actually does not outspeed here, which is pretty insane. Oh yeah, I forgot that the Tailwind was up. Cacturne comes out on the Enamorous, actually gets off a huge Hex, which does 72% is no laughing joke, but Enamorous is going to knock it out with a Moonblast. Wait, I was actually playing myself. Why the hell would Cacturne no Hex? Of course, that's Zora Kasui. Next, we are going to see Donphans come out, take some spike damage. Tauros Paldea is the play. Now we can actively see that Donphans going for Protect, trying to scout to see what that Namorous wants to do, as well as get back a little bit of leftover chip. But we can see at this point, Tauros is now going to start bulking up on Donphans. And if Donphans does not have a way of dealing with this thing, Body Press only doing 13%, it's going to continuously do less as they bulk up. That will mean at this point of time, Tauros is going to continue to bulk up no matter what this Donphans bun, as long Donphans does. As Tauros is showing Iron Head, so it actually has a way of damaging Donphans. Taking 85% is quite insane. So at this point, Donphans is definitely going to fall. Not after this Iron Head, but the following one after the wish gets cut off. And we're basically going to see another really clean Tauros cleanup, bulk up Tauros cleanup, take out Donphans, also take out Tyranitar with close combat, as well as or Iron Head. It really doesn't make a difference. And then finally Cacturne comes out and dies to a close combat slash Iron Head as well. So that is going to be a 4-0 victory for the Sonoran Pikachus. Again, feel free to skip beyond this point if you just want to watch the games, but now we are going to go into the review of the match. So turn 1. Yeah, sorry, I have my notes here. Let's see. So let me put this over here so I don't forget. So turn 1. I do like the EQ play from Mojave to predict taunt on Sableye. I think that was their main reason for going for EQ there, because Sableye often runs taunt. But Hippo doesn't necessarily win the 1v1 of Sableye versus Hippo, because obviously Sableye can just recover and also will-o-wisp Hippo, which is a little bit annoying. As well as, like, if it was taunt there, I think you take, like, Sableye takes a bit of chip from Earthquake, but it definitely just doesn't, like, die because it always runs recover. So I do think potentially going Cacturne there is a pretty strong play as well. Simply because you are a dark type that's immune to any of the prankster stuff that wants to happen. So you could actually hard swap Cacturne, and then all it can do is most likely Nightshade you, or like it can't will-o-wisp you, so if you're physical you're totally fine. But it can go for like Nightshade, which really isn't doing that much, but Cacturne at least could probably get up a Swords Dance, or at least some chip damage with like Leaf Blade. Of course, you're probably walking into Paldea Blaze, so you maybe have to find out, like, you know, predict on that. But potentially you could get off some little bit of chip on the enemy team. Also, considering that Sableye actually switched out on the Hippo, that is more likely to show that Sableye actually isn't taunt, because if it is taunt, there's no reason for it not to go there, because obviously you want to prevent the rocks. Although, like, it seems like with their strategy, they didn't really want taunt, because they can always switch into Decidueye onto the Hippo and always get the defog up. I do think that this Stealth Rock is a bit ballsy by the Hippo, but also, like, it worked really well, as well as, like, you know, you don't die to one Leaf Blade, so it's totally fine to go for this. Yeah, this is all fine. Magneton comes in. It does take a Leaf Blade pretty relatively well, assuming that it's EVLA. I mean, that was a crit that did no damage. Pretty unfortunate T-Wave miss here as well from the Magneton, because obviously you're missing out on a lot of damage, but then, like, ultimately they do basically get this damage back because of the double para here, as well as this was not a roll from the Flash Cannon doing 44%, because this Magneton is actually analytic and not Magnet Pull. Because Decidueye goes first, this is why Magneton picks up the kill with Flash Cannon. Next, turn 7, going Hippo here is really good for the Tauros, as well as the following turn of them always going for a Whirlwind is really good, especially since Tauros, at the time I was assuming that it might be a bulk upset, but it's really, really good. Like, this Hippo is basically needed to take down Tauros. Unless you have, like, special attackers, like Zora could probably outspeed and do, like, a decent amount of damage, but definitely Magneton just gets outsped. But I do like this Whirlwind play. I think it works really well here. For Samurai Hisui, when this came out, I think for... Sorry. sorry, this is not turn 9, turn 10. I do think instead of EQ here by Mojave Cacturnes, I do think Whirlwind is slightly better play, because, you know, it might be a 2-hit KO, 3-hit KO to kill this Samurai, in which your opponent can ceaseless edge spam, get up those spikes. It's really annoying for your team because you have no defogger. So like once those spikes are up, they're there for the rest of the game. So I do think that potentially whirlwinding here is kind of fine. I mean, you might take a lot from Aqua Cutter, but I think from your opponent's perspective that you have no spinner, Ceaseless Edge is really free here because you're just getting chip, as well as more importantly getting up the spikes. So I do think that whirlwind is slightly better here because you can force this thing out and basically they can't spike stack on you. You could also go Dosh Bun here, resist the dark move, and then threaten this thing out with a fairy type move. I also think that's a decent play. But yeah, I think staying in here, just going for the EQ. Unfortunate miss because I think they would have been able to get off like at least 3 layers of spikes, I believe, if they didn't miss that, because after this they take an EQ, like they would have gotten on all 3 layers of spikes, which would have been even worse for the Mojave Cacturnes team. But turn 15, let's continue here. I think obviously this is a really good plan for Sonoran Pikachus, that basically they understand, you know, their Tauros Paldea can basically sweep the end game. The only things that they have to worry about is obviously Zoro Kasui and Hippowdon, and once we see that Swirlage actually goes for, like, you know, Terra Grass Swords Dance, like, and does this amount of chip to it, you know, Hippowdon does now die to spikes on switch in. I mean, Tauros is very free to eventually, you know, sweep in the end game, which is it's very good planning by Sonoran Pikachus. Also, sorry, I skipped one turn. On this final turn, when Mojave Cacturnes actually whirlwinds the Samurai here, it's actually worse than just going for the kill. And the reason why is because you could just EQ here and kill it. I guess you are worried that the Enamorus might switch in, but also whenever you whirlwind this thing out, you're basically giving Sonoran Pikachus a free sack anytime they want. So it's not the greatest play because it seemed like your opponent was willing to sacrifice the Samurai Hisui for all the turns, as many spikes as they can, which makes sense because your team does not have a defogger / spinner. But anyway, let's continue forward. I have something for turn 19. I think turn 19. Here we see. So, Tyranitar taking a Moonblast. I think at this point, after you get the T-Wave off, I don't know if T-Tar has, I assume it probably didn't have a move for Enamorus, but I do think keeping Magneton healthy here, rather than actually hard switching into Magneton on like a potential Moonblast, you're definitely dependent on the paralysis here. I definitely think Tyranitar is more than likely a better sack here, specifically because after it does take like another % of 8 spikes damage, Tyranitar is also very slow, meaning it really can't do much. It probably can't even do that much to Cerulege because it has Terra Grass. It might do okay against Sableye, but especially against Tauros Paldea, even Enamorus, it does not win the 1v1 unless you have Stone Edge / Ice Beam here. So I do think it was potentially better to sack the Tyranitar here instead of going hard Magneton, because obviously you need the health on Magneton to 1v1 the Enamorus with Magneton. Sorry. And yeah, also as I said before, hard switching here just basically puts additional hazards on Tyranitar to come back in the future. But I do think the Moonblast here, dropping the special attack, was definitely a bit unfortunate because obviously now Enamorus is taking less damage. But yeah. Oh yeah, after the Magneton sack, I am assuming that Tyranitar did not have Stone Edge or Ice Beam, or like any way to hitting this, because I do think instead of going Zoro Kasui here, I do think going Tyranitar is better, because this basically, you know, Enamorus T just sees this as something it wants to continue to spam Moonblast on, as well as, you know, Zoro Kasui cannot one-shot Enamorus, even though it does have Hex and does a lot of damage. Yeah, at this point, also when Doshman comes out and turn 21 Doshman goes for Protect, I do think that this is basically too passive for this Doshman in this position, because specifically you're going to take the Sandstorm damage chip, which basically negates the leftovers. So there's no real reason to Protect here. If anything, it's always better to play rough here for some chip or even potentially wish. Yeah, I think the protect was a little bit too passive. So turn 23. Yeah, as I said before, turn 23, Sonoran Pikachu is basically understanding at this point that their Tauros just wins between the set of 4, because Donphan really does not have anything to hit Tauros once it sets up some defense boosts. I also do think that turn 25, I mean, Protect doesn't do anything here for Donphan. You need to always spam Play Rough and hope for a crit, as well as you could even potentially just outright sack Tyranitar and then go Donphan. Try to fish for a crit again with Play Rough. But at this position, it's basically lost. But there are some hopes. Like, your best out is to always try to Play Rough spam and hope for a crit, instead of trying to wish. Because ultimately, like, Tauros can just sit here and bulk up all at once. And it's just going to get worse and worse whenever they get more defense boost. So it's always better to spam Play Rough there and hope for a crit. Although, like, yeah, like, in this position, it's like, you know, what do you do for real? But, as well as potentially, like, going Sandstorm, going Tyranitar just to set up the Sandstorm to negate the leftovers recovery could be useful as well. That's another instance of when, you know, maybe you hard switch out of the Donphan into Tyranitar so you get rid of your Intimidate drop, as well as, you know, Tyranitar sets up the Sand, which can negate its leftovers, and then you hope for crits between your last 2 guys. But that's specifically just try to fix the differential. I don't think at that point that this side wins, just because I think Ceruledge is just going to be too much. But yeah, that is going to be it for this match. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, next up we have the Santa Cruz Swadloons with the team roster in the top right versus the Las Vegas Corviknights with the team roster in the bottom right. Santa Cruz deciding to bring Meowscarada, Tinglu, Goldingo, Florges, Tatsugiri, and Swalot, while Las Vegas Corviknights deciding to bring Arbolivia, Lokix, Iron Valiant, Typhlosion Hisui, Quaquavel, and Bronzong. So let's get right into this match. We are of course going to see a Bronzong lead into a Meowscarada lead. We're going to see a U-turn from Meowscarada actually into Tinglu as Bronzong sets up the Stealth Rocks. We're going to see Tinglu actually set up Stealth Rocks on Las Vegas side of the field as Quaquavel comes in, and then we are going to see a hard swap into Goldingo to prevent the Rapid Spin, which Quaquavel does go for. The following turn, Quaquavel actually going for a U-turn, but Goldingo actually showing red card, meaning that Arbolivia is going to be pulled out, and Goldingo goes for a Make It Rain, doing clean 44%. Of course, Arbolivia is Harvest Citrus Berry, so it is going to get back some health. We are then going to see a hard switch out from Goldingo into Meowscarada to take the Earth Power. Arbolivia getting another Citrus Berry. Very unfortunate, but of course Meowscarada can knock off to get off that berry and prevent future harvests. We are now going to see a Bronzong sack as someone has to take that Meowscarada knockoff, basically. Bronzong taking a lot of damage. Of course, this protect really doesn't matter because Bronzong is definitely a sack here. We are going to see that Meowscarada is not scarfed in any fashion, showing that it did go for Flower Trick there, basically meaning that it's not banded. I think it also came in on rock, so we already knew that was heavy duty boots. Typhlosion Hisui coming out here threatening this Meowscarada, but Meowscarada actually has Protect as a good way of scouting for Scarfers, as well as preventing Lokix's first impression. We're going to see a switch into Tinglu on the Flamethrower. Of course, not taking any damage at all, really. 23% even after leftovers is even less, as we're going to see a hard switch from Typhlosion Hisui and a Quaquavel here as Tinglu goes for a Whirlwind. Back out into Typhlosion Hisui, which is very unfortunate because it's taking more and more Stealth Rock damage. We finally see a Throat Chop from Tinglu, trying to see if they're going to predict at all. And then we are finally going to see Quaquavel actually go for a Wave Crash, do heavy damage against Goldingo, doing a good 60%. Following that, Goldingo actually doubling out into Tatsugiri as Quaquavel catching that prediction, going for a U-turn. Finally, we're going to see a little bit of momentum in Las Vegas's favor as Lokix come out. It does take Stealth Rock damage, but it is able to pack a huge punch with first impression, doing a clean 44% Tera Bug there onto Swalot. Following that, we're going to see a Protect on Swalot, as well as Lokix goes for a U-turn. This is good recovery for the Swalot for sure. U-turn doing a little bit less damage, but decent chip at that. Quackville coming out on Swalot to Toxic on the switch in. Very good prediction on the Santa Cruz part. We're going to see a little bit of Protect stalling here as Quackville does want to go for the Rapid Spin. And then we finally see Tatsugiri come out on the Wave Crash though, catching the Storm Drain, actually giving it a special attack boost. And I think it's going to want a Rapid Spin here, but actually instead it is, oh I forgot. It would be faster as long as Quackville is not fully invested. So Draco Meteor is able to take out Tatsugiri here. And it makes sense because Tatsugiri also probably died to a close combat there. So we are going to see Iron Valiant come out with special attack boost, obviously threatening this Tatsugiri. But we are going to see an over prediction, or potentially just that Santa Cruz was willing to sack their Tatsugiri at this point. We are going to see that they were heavy duty boots, and they actually get a memento off, which is pretty important to weaken this Iron Valiant as Florges comes in. Arbolivia is the switch in, but we now understand that Florges with a Moonblast is doing decent chunk of damage. Arbolivia does still have its Harvest Citrus Berry intact, which is quite annoying. We are actually going to see Florges go for a Calm Mind here as Arbolivia sets up Leech Seed. So we're going to see really decide whether Florges or Arbolivia win this 1v1 between just spamming Earth Power, Leech Seed, Synthesis versus Florges most likely going for some Wish, Protect, Calm Mind, Moonblast shenanigans. We're going to see that Florges, as long as it keeps Calm Minding up, will eat up these Earth Powers pretty easily. And then soon it's going to be doing a lot of damage with its Moonblast. So as long as it keeps Calm Minding, which it does, Arbolivia trying to catch those Moonblasts to weaken, make sure that they take the least amount of damage. But we do see that after a Wish, Florges is in a good position here to start spamming Moonblast. We are going to see Low Kicks come in on another Calm Mind. But at full HP, Florges should be able to live this. Smart play. Of course, Florges also going for Protect to prevent this first impression, meaning Low Kick's strongest move will always be U-turn. Low Kicks does get some good health back. Axe Hit coming out does a decent 39%. But then again, Low Kicks does unfortunately die to a Moonblast. So now we have to see Typhlosion Hisui come out here, but of course Florges is specially defensive, has Spadef boost, as well as Typhlosion Hisui is specially offensive, meaning that Florges should be able to take this on 1v1 anyways. We are going to see Florges basically Wish Protect and then proceed to, I believe, Moonblast the rest of Las Vegas Corviknights squad. So from here it's looking pretty Jover for the Las Vegas Corviknights. Florges is definitely hard to deal with. Iron Valiant also showing knockoff, which could be useful to weaken the leftovers. Makes it very reliant on getting Wish support. But between these last two Pokemon, obviously Florges is able to kill Arbolivia with 2 Moonblasts, and that is going to be the game. A good 5-0 for the Santa Cruz Swadloons going into week 7. But yeah, this Florges was honestly really good set for this late game. Especially the Protect is just really good for first impression. Low Kicks just works well together. I don't know if U-turn, I don't think U-turn would have done more damage there, would it? I'm not exactly sure on the Low Kicks there, but potentially continuously like U-turning, sacking something maybe could made this differential a little bit closer, but yeah, in the end, ain't nothing but a thing. So let's go into the review of the match. Feel free to skip if you want. So I will say turn 1, a very bold Stealth Rock by the Las Vegas Corviknights here, basically willing to sack their Bronzong just for Stealth Rocks, but ultimately it did work for them. You turn out to Ting Lu to make sure that they get rocks up. This preventing the Quackville spin is also really good here with the Gold Dingo. Turn 9, I believe when Typhlosion Hisui comes out, I do think Protect here is pretty good because obviously you scout to see if it's Scarf. But following this turn, I do think that Tatsugiri is not bad here because you switch in on, you had decent special defense with Tatsugiri. If it's stuck in a Flamethrower, you can take that resisted damage and even threaten this thing with a you can basically like spam Rapid Spin because you know that your opponent eventually has to switch out unless they're not Scarfed, which it seemed like by the end of this they seem to be Scarf Respects in some fashion. So I think Tatsugiri would have been a good play here besides Ting Lu, but really that's just like a minor thing. Turn 13, getting off this wave crash on Goldingo is actually really huge. Quackville can get really scary after it gets like, you know, one rapid spin plus Moxie boost can do a lot of work. Obviously there's a very good prediction on the Las Vegas Corviknights side, and does that give them a little bit of initiative to get back in this game for sure. Because I think Quackville actually, if it's max speed, it outspeeds Goldingo, so yeah, it can definitely threaten that in that manner. Turn 17, good Toxic by Santa Cruz Swadloons, predicting the U-turn. Turn 21. Instead of knocking off here on Tatsugiri, I do believe that Moonblast here is always your play for Iron Valiant. Strictly because if Swallow ever does come in, after it takes Stealth Rock damage, it can't take 2 Moonblast even after a Black Sludge recovery. As well as Moonblast just does damage to everything. Even Goldingo can't take 2. Again, after Stealth Rocks, Florges could take 2, but again, it's not going to like it that much, as well as you probably prefer to be Poison Jab for Iron Valiant if you have it. So I do think Moonblast is honestly the best move for the Las Vegas to go for here, as it does the most damage to anything that could potentially switch in, except for Florges, obviously. Turn 25, really good call mindset. It can just win and stall out the rest of the team, except for crits and Iron Valiant doing decent damage, which Poison Jab. Yeah, it seemed like Iron Valiant didn't have Poison Jab coverage, so I won't really like blame them that much for that. But I do think potentially here, instead of if you have Swords Dance, also I don't know if you have Swords Dance with low kicks. Sword Dance on the Protect is also really strong here, as well as instead of going for Axe Kick, I do think U-turn might be better, just because you can U-turn and then potentially just sack something and then go back out into low kicks and try to do like, you know, eventually over time just do a little bit more chip. It's not going to win you the game, but it might change the differential just slightly. But yeah, overall this game, I really think, I mean, I talked to Santa Cruz a little bit, as well as like while they were preparing this match, they had really good prep for their match here. I mean, several things having Protect, like this thing had Protect, this thing had Protect, this thing had Protect, all for low kicks to prevent first impression. Really good, really strong idea. Goldingo to prevent the rapid spin, as well as the red card if Quackville ever sets up. Calm Mind Florges also really powerful for the end game when there's only special attackers left. So for Las Vegas Corviknights, I really would not be upset about losing this match, because this was a very intense match, as well as like your opponent brought a majority of the right sets to deal with your threats. And sometimes like that's okay, like sometimes you have a bad matchup where like, you know, your opponent just has, I will say like the one thing about low kicks, which I think, you know, low kicks is very powerful with first impression. It can be scary. You know, some people can just try to counter it with Protect, but the way to deal with those kind of Protect shenanigans is just to bring Swords Dance, and then whenever they try to Protect on you, you just Swords Dance up, and then you become a lot more threatening. You probably also keep Sucker Punch on here. Not sure about Axe Kick, but it's probably decent. But yeah, depending, I don't know exactly the roster off the top of my head whether Axe Kick would be that strong, but potentially all you need is Dark and Bug moves, which from the roster it looks like you can kill everything with Dark and Bug moves, so I don't think you need Axe Kick here. Potentially Swords Dance could have been a better option, but again, I would not be upset about losing this match because Santa Cruz played extremely well. They had very good prep, I will say. So yeah, without further ado, let's move on to the next battle. All right, next up we have the Pittsburgh Scizors against the Los Angeles Pelippers. The Los Angeles Pelippers actually have a YouTube channel as well, so make sure to check out their YouTube channel in the description below. They make really good content. I have a fucking splinter in my hand that hurts so bad. Sorry. They have a YouTube channel in the description below. Make sure you check them out. They have team builders and they do live live playing the games as they do them, as well as I do believe they are in high potential to make playoffs. I don't want to jinx it just yet, but they are a high contender for playoffs, and make sure to stay glued to their channel. Of course, I'm always like slightly delayed on videos too. So yeah, you can always watch their videos ahead of mine, which is really good too. So without further ado, let's get into it. Pittsburgh Scizor with the roster in the top right. Los Angeles Pelippers with the roster in the bottom right. Pittsburgh Scizor is deciding to bring Slitherwing, Goodra, Rotom, Mo, Sylveon, Honchkrow, and Iron Treads. Los Angeles Pelippers, Walking Wake, Iron Fist, Iron Hands, Dugtrio, Alolan, Skuntank, Cinderace, and Scyther. So let's get into this game. We're going to see Dugtrio, Alolan as the lead against the Slitherwing. We're going to see Slitherwing actually go for an Earthquake, but Alolan Dugtrio is Sash, meaning they are able to get up Stealth Rocks, and then they double out into Scyther, predicting the EQ again. More than likely, this could mean showing signs that Slitherwing might be Scarf or Banded in some factor, but we don't know for certain yet. Of course, Slitherwing is scared of a Flying type move, so Goodra comes out here. Tailwind is set up for Scyther, as then we see Scyther actually go for Tera Steel and then Swords Dance up. We are going to see Goodra still go for a Flamethrower, which would have hit Scizor either way. Does decent damage, as well as it does not get the burn, meaning that Terra Blast actually does a decent chunk of damage here. 66% is no laughing matter. We're going to see that even lives the next Flamethrower, and then proceeds to go for a U-turn to take out Goodra. So it is able to come back in the future, has a little bit of chip, as well as, you know, Scyther is decently fast against some of these other mods. So it can definitely be useful, as well as, like, you know, Tera Steel into Sylveon is pretty useful as well. We are going to see Dugtrio Alolan come out, as Iron Treads is the bring in to try to get off a spin. Dugtrio Alolan actually makes a really good play, getting off a little bit of chip left with Sucker Punch before it goes down. Because of booster energy, it doesn't outspeed. Iron Tread's actually going for a rapid spin here. But the Tangle here actually prevents this speed boost, which is also really cool. We were going to see a Walking Wake come out. Walking Wake unfortunately does take an off, loses its leftovers, but it's actually Physical Wake, meaning this waterfall unfortunately does not kill. We're going to see the following turn Earthquake come off. Does not pick off the Walking Wake, but unfortunately Walking Wake does go for Dragon Dance here. As well as, like, if you watch Los Angeles Pelippers, like, point of view here, like, it's so funny because, like, it's so unfortunate that this happened, but also, like, 2 turns before he was like, okay, I just checked to calc, like, you know, after a Dragon Dance with Walking Wake, I don't outspeed this thing. And then, like, this turn, he's like, okay, I'm gonna click Dragon Dance here. And then, like, the next turn, he's like, okay, I took the Earthquake, and now I don't outspeed. And then, like, it finally connected in his mind. He's like, wait, I literally just said that I didn't outspeed. I could tell he's really frustrated, and it's very frustrating. Because obviously it's a misplay. I mean, Walking Wake obviously dies for nothing, as well as, like, Iron Treads is still around. But yeah, if they just would have went for another waterfall there, it would have taken this thing out. Which Treads is still very much a threat into this roster for sure, because right now there's now that Scyther is no longer Flying type, there's no EQ resist / immunity. So yeah, we are going to see Skuntank go out, threatening Iron Treads with the Sucker Punch, but they do decide to switch out into the Slitherwing. Good play on Pittsburgh part. We're going to see a first impression come out onto the Skuntank. It is Rocky Helmet Skuntank, which is pretty good. Tera Fire also for Slitherwing. Maybe Skuntank can learn a Flying type move, I'm not exactly sure. But Skuntank going for a Toxic here is also really useful. We're going to see a double into Iron Treads here, most likely predicting a Poison type move, which Skuntank unfortunately does go for. As well as, weirdly enough, I mean, because this was not Earthquake on Slitherwing and it was first impression, and then they decided to switch out, like, they would be faster. This basically proves that Slitherwing is now Scarf or Banded. Eventually, Treads does die to a Sucker Punch, which is really good. Slitherwing comes back out, obviously threatening with an Earthquake. Now that this thing is Scarf / Band, it can do a lot of damage to this team because Scyther is no longer Flying type. So Scyther does come out, but we do see now that it is guaranteed Slitherwing is Scarf because it outsped and killed Scyther. We are going to see Iron Hands come out and live at least 1, meaning it can take this thing out with an Earthquake. Following that, we are going to see Sylveon come out, in which Iron Hands does live the Hyper Voice and then does a lot of damage with Heavy Slam. So it looks like it might be coming down to a close match. Another Hyper Voice is going to take out Iron Hands, but we do have Cinderace left. Cinderace taking out Sylveon with a Power Ball. Rotom Mow coming out, but Rotom Mow actually has the Akka Berry. It would have been a roll to kill because obviously 49% times 2 is like, you know, 98. But yeah, after that Akka, definitely after some Volt Switch, a little bit of Volt Switch chip here, Honchkrow comes out and goes for a Brave Ward and unfortunately takes out Cinderace. So that is going to be a 2-0 for the Pittsburgh Scizors, and an unfortunate loss for Los Angeles Pelippers, because I think if they won this game, they're guaranteed in playoffs. Now that they did lose this game, it means that they have to win the final week, or like their opponent has to, they can both lose. The person that they're up against can also lose. Like they can both lose, but like he has to have higher differential in the end. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to go through the review of the game. If you want to skip, feel free to. So turn 1, also, also something that I totally forgot. I was talking about, I wrote this in my notes, but I wrote these notes a couple days ago. Based off your Dugtrio's Alolan speed, you actually know turn 1 that this Slitherwing is actually Scarf because it outsped your Alolan Dugtrio. So yeah, you actually know that it's Scarf now. That's potentially a reason why that Pittsburgh later on went for first impression instead of EQ, but yeah, off the rip, you do know that this thing is Scarf. I know this is like a bit of information that I don't think you acknowledged in your video, but yeah, we're gonna talk about the other mistakes because this was fine here. I really like this EQ play. We're gonna see that Goodra comes out. I low-key think that Swords Dance is probably a better way to punish Goodra switching in, but also I can really understand that. I think from their video, Los Angeles Pelippers was really expecting Treads here, which makes sense because Scyther really can't touch Iron Treads, so that is also like a really free switch in for Iron Treads to come in here and Rapid Spin. So I do understand why they went for Tailwind here. But yeah, Terra Steel here. Swords Dance is not bad here, but of course you do have to think about Goodra. Most of the time it's not really running Rock Slide. It's mostly running like Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, and then maybe Dragon type move. Potentially Power Whip for water types. So it does make sense here that, it will have Flamethrower. But it's not a bad play to at least get off this Terra Blast damage on Goodra, because it basically, if you're walking Wake with Special, this is actually like a really great way of basically getting rid of something that you need to spam Dragon type moves on. Now you can just spam Water type moves, obviously for Rotom Mow. But yeah, getting rid of Goodra is also really powerful. I do think here, Scyther is really low HP. It can be useful, as I talked before in the video, but potentially you could just Terra Blast again. Like, what would happen if you Terra Blast again? Maybe Treads come out and it does want to go for the Rapid Spin, but it might not. It might just want to EQ you. But then we don't really have EQ switch in, so I can understand going for U-turn here. Scyther might be useful in the end, especially against Sylveon and potentially Rotom Mow, because I do think the Scyther is fast. I do think if you're going to U-turn here, the problem with Dugtrio alone, which I mean I like, because it does threaten Treads, but also it doesn't threaten Treads in some ways. So I do think if this Tailwind was still up, this would be a really good play. Because obviously you outspeed and you can go for an Earthquake. But I think that now that the Tailwind is gone, obviously you as a player are, preventing the rapid speed boost, but now that they are booster energy and they are showing speed, that means that realistically your Tangle Hair doesn't matter that much. Sucker Punch is a really good play here, but ultimately, like, this is a free spin for Treads for you to only get like a little bit of chip off. So I think potentially having like more offensive presence with potentially Cinderace, because if Treads ever comes in, you do outspeed and you can go for a Pyro Ball. It's at least decent damage, although they could still go Treads and threaten with an Earthquake, and then you're guaranteed to sack something. I would assume Cinderace dies to one Earthquake. Maybe Iron Hands is the play. I don't know. I feel like just Dugtrio low in here, it could have been utilized a little bit more. And as well as like, if your opponent's basically getting off a Rapid Spin, getting rid of hazards, and you're only getting 20% off of it with Sucker Punch, which is like not bad. But yeah, I think Dartro could have been used later on because it is really fast against some of its other things. So it can get off decent chip, and also it could be like a better sack besides just getting off this little bit of Sucker Punch damage. But I mean, it's not terrible because the chip is nice. But I do think what's crazy here is when Walking Wake comes out, my initial perspective would always be to go Sylveon on the Hydro Steam. So it's actually pretty crazy that Pittsburgh actually decided to stay in here, but potentially they were predicting Walking Wake to be weakness policy, which is what's been brought for the last 2 weeks. So it makes sense that they do want to knock off here rather than EQ, because then they can knock off, prevent the weakness policy, and then Walking Wake is a lot, you know, not as much to deal with. As long as you have Sylveon, you can just spam Wish, Protect, and then Hyper Voice. You know, you also knock off the specs if it is specs. So yeah, Walking Wake, if it was Hydro Steam, just absolutely one-shot this thing. As I said before, this was just a misplay on the Los Angeles Pelippers part to go for a Dragon Dance here. I mean, the pressure was on for this match, so I definitely I get it for sure. Right here, good prediction to switch out Treads on the Sucker Punch there, because that was basically the only out for Treads not to basically get a kill or do a lot of damage on something. Yeah, I think this was most likely a prediction, but like, first impression seems really bad here for Slitherwing. I don't understand why you don't lock yourself into EQ with Pittsburgh here, because you outspeed everything, and yeah, EQ just seems a lot better. Toxic is a good play, as well as like, yeah, as I said before, now that you know that Scarf Ban, you know that it's going to switch here. Poison Jab is fine. I don't know if there was another play that you could have gone for. I forget the moveset for Skuntank, but Sucker Punch, picking that off is fine. And then, yeah, we're going to see Slitherwing basically clean up. I do think sacking Scyther here, again, like, I barely noticed it when watching the battle the first time, but this thing is Scarf. It's just like minor things at the very beginning of the battle. That's really good information, knowing that this thing is Scarf. Because sacking your Scyther here is very unfortunate, as well as like you can keep it around, and it potentially can help you out in the 1v and these last little couple of battles. Like, you just go Treads here, you kill this with an EQ, then Sylveon comes out. It's like the same thing that happens, but then you have Cinderace in the back to deal chip damage, and then, like, you know, potentially Scyther can be a decent sack for something. Like potentially, like, you could go Scyther on Sylveon to clean up with Tera Blast, and then it's a position between Honchkrow and Rotom Mow that you have to finish with Cinderace. Yeah, all this is fine. I think Honchkrow at the end was also Scarf. But another really interesting idea that Los Angeles Pelippers brought up in their video is Rotom Mow had an Aqua Berry, but if Cinderace, like, went for Gunk Shot here, which is like, you know, it's like, you know, why would you ever go for Gunk Shot here? But I think low-key, I haven't calced this yet, but it might make sense for you to go for Gunk Shot because it's higher base power, and if Rotom Mow is defensive, it probably has a chance to live Power Ball. I think this Cinderace, based off the team builder, I didn't know if it was changed, was like 252 HP, 252 speed, so it actually has like a reasoning to run Gunk Shot here and go for Gunk Shot. Because I think it does more damage, and then you just one-shot the Rotom Mow, because if Powerball did this much with the Aqua Berry, that means that Gunk Shot just killed there, and then it really becomes interesting of like Honchkrow. When you're up against Honchkrow, I know you live at least one Brave Bird, you do get outsped. They take the recoil damage, and then I think Gunk Shot might not be enough. But yeah, like Gunk Shot potentially into Poison would have made this like an extremely close game. But yeah, Scarf Braveboard also in the back with Honchkrow is just really, really cool. By the way, how did Skuntank die? Did this take aftermath damage? It didn't take aftermath damage. Weird. I swear from the team builder that Skuntank was aftermath. That's interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, that's basically an overview of the game. Just some slight misplays on Los Angeles Pelippers, and I think, like, weirdly enough, like in that late game position, it's like, man, do I ever Gunk Shot here? It's like, no, I always go for Powerball, so that makes sense. I think Powerball is 100 base power, whereas Gunk Shot is 120. But I think Gunk Shot may have made sense to go on the Rotom Mow there. It would have made it a lot closer. But yeah, really, really good game, actually. Really, a lot closer than you think. But of course, this has some playoff effects, but we'll talk about that in the end. But yeah, let's move on to the next match. All right, next up we have the Toronto Staraptors with the roster in the top right against the Jacksonville Jigglypuffs. Man, my chair is getting super freaky. Jacksonville Jigglypuffs roster in the bottom right. Why is the music so sad now? Let's turn up the music. Why is it so sad? Is it too loud? A little bit loud. It seems so sad for a second. Oh wait, which one are we on? Toronto Staraptors deciding to bring Dragapult, Lucario, Gardevoir, Clodsire, Rotom Fan, and Spidups. I think I have the most recent updates. They did do some free agency trades, but they do have Clodsire for this week. So I do apologize about that. Excuse me, Jacksonville Jigglypuffs bring Garchomp, Tropius, Scizor, Azumarill, Jolteon, and Quillfish Hisui. Now, starting off this match, we are going to see a Quillfish Hisui lead onto the Clodsire. Of course, really good idea for Jacksonville Jigglypuffs to immediately start spamming hazards as their opponent has no way of dealing with them. You're going to see Clodsire for the Stealth Rock as well. Gardevoir comes in, traces the Intimidate, really doesn't do too much. But Quillfish is going to continue to set up spikes as Gardevoir gets off a decent damage of 46% with Moonblast. Going to be a 3-8 KO, unfortunately, still, as Quillfish is able to get off a little chip damage with Barbarage into a poison, which, you know, makes sense as a 50% chance to poison there. So it's pretty common. We are going to see Gardevoir very low here as Scizor does go out for the Bullet Punch. Dragapult switched in, taking the spike damage as well as the Bullet Punch. That is definitely banded Bullet Punch, and another one will take down Dragapult. Now we're going to see Rotom Fan come in. Jolteon comes out, obviously predicting an electric type move, but Rotom Fan actually going for Reflect, and then I would assume a Light Screen here as Tropius is the switch for Jolteon. Then we're going to see a Volt switch onto the Tropius. As we can see, it is most likely Harvest Citrus Berry for the Tropius as Lucario comes out. And now we see Tropius is this disgusting substitute Leech Seed set that is very common on random battles, I believe. But yeah, Lucario comes in. It does have a balloon. It is going to start spamming Ice Punch to make sure that Tropius hopefully dies. Oh wait, psych, it's not Leech Seed, it's Dragon Dance. I totally forgot about that. Leaf Blade is going to pop the balloon. We are going to see a close combat from Lucario, which is a bit unfortunate because I do believe Ice Punch would have been close to taking it out there. Tropius getting back its Citrus Berry. Of course, this thing is a threat. Continually getting off that Harvest is very, very annoying. Tropius going for an Earthquake, doing 41% to Clodsire. But Clodsire actually throwing off a Gunk Shot and killing the Tropius. That's actually insane. Next up, we have Jolteon coming out on the Clodsire, trying to deal some decent damage with Tera Blast Fire. Does not do enough, however, and Clodsire is able to recover off that damage. Clodsire looking like it's about to take all of this damage to the face and just basically recover it off, as well as throwing off another Gunk Shot. Landing, of course, because Clodsire does not miss those. We are going to see Clodsire 1v1 and kill Jolteon at this point. Then we see Garchomp actually come out, threatening Clodsire with an Earthquake. Gardevoir is the sack, does die to spike damage. Garchomp was going to go for Dragon Claw. Rotom Fan comes out, obviously, to set up screens. Dragon Claw doing a clean 50% as it does get burned, unfortunately, by the Rotom Fan. But at this point, we are going to see Garchomp switch on to Azumarill. Rotom Fan going for Reflect. Azumarill trying to get off some chip damage with Aqua Jet. Does take a lot from Volt Switch as well. It is a Citrus Berry set. Could have potentially been Belly Drum. Clodsire coming out, actually showing that it's Water Absorb in the end game to actually 1v1 the Azumarill. Yeah, Azumarill gonna switch on to Scizor. Reflect is still up, does take the Gunk Shot, however, and we're gonna see that Aerial Ace is doing a decent damage, 28%. Scizor gonna keep spamming that as Clodsire is going for Stone Edge. We are gonna see that once this Reflect is gone, Aerial Ace doing quite more damage than we expect. Stone Edge is chipping away at the Scizor though. You're going to see a Reflect here on the Clodsire living on 1%. Very insane. But Reflect is gone now, meaning that Aerial Ace actually does a lot more. And 57% is a lot. Rotom Fan coming out. Garchomp is the switch in, hopefully to take a Volt Switch. It does work out for the Jacksonville Jigglypuffs. I'm going for a Crunch there just for some decent chip. Rotom Fan going for a Reflect there into Spidups. Unfortunately does take the spike damage as well as the Crunch, but it's not that much damage. Obviously defense drop is pretty scary, but we do see Spidups trying to 1v1 this Garchomp, because who the hell is a Garchomp to a Spidups? like, for some reason I always find Spidops like ends up living things and doing more damage than anyone expects. But Spidops is going to be taking rocky or rough skin damage as it 1v1s. Unfortunately, Garchomp gets a crit here, but ultimately it didn't really make that much of a difference. Garchomp is going to die to a burn here as Rotom Fan spams Will-O-Wisp here, but of course Scizor can basically come in and pick this off with a Bullet Punch, and that is going to be the game. Yeah, a good 2-0 for the Jacksonville Jigglypuffs against the Toronto Staraptors. We're going to go through the review of the game, and feel free to skip if you'd like. So yeah, I will say excellent turn 1 idea for the Jacksonville Jigglypuff. I'm pretty sure I double checked. Rotom Fan does not get defog, so immediately just going for spikes on Qwilfish Hisui is a really good play, because you can just spam spikes and your opponent can't get rid of them. So really good game plan. For Toronto here, you definitely want to mitigate the amount of pressure that Qwilfish can do right now by setting up spikes. So I think turn 1, it's totally fine for you to go for Stealth Rock here. But I do think the following turn, you know, you do decent damage with Qwilfish or with Earthquake, but I assume what was your set? By the end of it, it was Gunk Shot, Stone Edge, Recover, and Stealth Rock. So you didn't even have Earthquake. I do think instead of going hard Gardevoir here, I do think Lucario is the best bet, because you take the Resisted Dark move. Hopefully you're justified, but you know, yeah, I think you're always justified here. And then you're immune to the poison type moves, and then Loki, you just start setting up Swords Dances, and you can, you know, you basically say, you know, Qwilfish, if you want to stay in here and set up spikes, you're going to be taking, you know, the damage of, I'm going to be setting up +2, +3, and then you got to figure that shit out of how you're going to kill me. So it's a very aggressive way of dealing with, you know, your opponent's spike stacking on you. You have to put the pressure on them. Yeah, as I said, turn 2, instead of Gardevoir, always Lucario here is a little bit better. Of course, you resist, just because simply Lucario resists the stabs, and then you can Swords Dance up if you're a Swords Dance set. Turn 6 here. For Toronto Staraptors, directly switching in, you know, well, first of all, it's always going to be, when Scizor comes in here, it's always going to be Bullet Punch. So for you, you potentially could go Clodsire. It's going to be taking a decent chunk, especially after spikes. You could even go, I think, Rotom Fan, because you resist the spikes. You don't have passive recovery, but basically you know that Bullet Punch is coming here, meaning Gardevoir is guaranteed going to die, and then it will die to spikes on entry. So I think going hard Dragapult is definitely a major misplay here, because you're taking the spike damage because you're not having to do boots, as well as, like, you know, Scizor's you know, Bullet Punch is no laughing matter for, you know, even if it wasn't banded, it would still be doing quite a lot of damage with this Bullet Punch. So I think this is just a way too aggressive play. Obviously, you probably had Flamethrower, but now that you switched in Dragapult, you know, you ended up, you know, Gardevoir was definitely a sack here, but now that you switched in Dragapult hard onto a Bullet Punch, now it's like these both are just sacks now, which is very unfortunate. Would have been a lot closer. For sure, if this potentially you just sacked Gardevoir outright and then potentially went Dragapult, or you found other ways of dealing with Scizor. Potentially just going Rotom Fan. I mean, you probably take a decent amount of damage, but then you threaten something with a Will-O-Wisp, and no one wants to get Will-O-Wisp on this team. So yeah, I mean, it ends up being what happens later on. Volt Switch here. Yeah, this is a good prediction by Jacksonville. Predicting a Volt Switch, I think that's a very good play. Will-O-Wisp also wouldn't have been bad there for the Reflect, but yeah, Reflect Light Screen here is still very, very valid. Yeah, also I think here for Jacksonville, when Jolteon does come out, weird that, you know, you take the, I mean, obviously you're worried about the Volt Switch damage, but I do think it's quite weird that you don't go for Volt Switch here, because essentially it's free chip because Jolteon is guaranteed to be faster. Potentially you're worried about Clodsire coming in, but I think potentially you could go hard Garchomp on Clodsire based off the set. But yeah, I think Volt Switch is a little bit free there, because if Clodsire ever comes in, you just go, you can either go Tropius on the EQ the following turn, or you just go Garchomp. And it should be pretty relatively free there, like free Volt Switch there. There's not much risk involved. All this was fine. I do think another major misplay here. Excuse me. So, Ice Punch here is like mandatory for Lucario. I get that, like, you know, potentially Azumarill might come in on the Ice Punch, but realistically, like, it doesn't want to come in on an Ice Punch, especially since like your opponent is already starting to set up. The reason why they have Leaf Blade here is because they need to pop your balloon, because then they can kill you with Earthquake. So right here, when they're popping your balloon and you go for close combat here, thinking about the only thing that could switch in to the Ice Punch would be Azumarill or Scizor, in which you have your own Clodsire to deal with Azumarill on the back because it's Water Absorb. It's like, not, especially since you have screens up too, you could probably 1v1 Azumarill potentially. I don't think it has superpower anymore. I'm not sure for certain, but definitely spamming Ice Punch here is definitely what you need to do, because this Tropius is definitely looking scary. Like, Ice Punch is your best way of dealing with it. And like, you know, this Tropius, now that it just Leaf Bladed you, you know, it thinks that it can go for an Earthquake the following turn. So like, you know, their main goal is always to, you know, Dragon Dance up and then Leaf Blade. Even though they have Ice Punch, they're hoping that that Ice Punch will not kill them, which I do think it does. So maybe a potential better play would, I mean, you're already starting to set up with Tropius. I feel like, you know, you just want to get off the damage. But yeah, definitely giving this opportunity when you close combat here to not kill the Tropius is definitely a misplay, I think. What was my exact wording for that? CC is a misplay. If you see your opponent go for setup, they might have EQ for you. Ice Punch is always the play. You might not die since Reflect is up. Yeah. So I think, so yeah, that was my reasoning of like, if they did decide to switch Scizor or Azumarill, you do have Reflect and Light Screen up to keep you alive for another turn in the future. So turn 13. Also, I do think instead of sacking Lucario here this following turn, well, I guess you kind of forgot that you'll get outsped by the Tropius. It's kind of a weird speed tier, isn't it? 221. I mean, if it's max speed, it would outspeed. But yeah, also I think it's a sacking Lucario here, which Lucario does have a lot of benefits. You could always just sack Gardevoir because it does die to spikes here instead of just Lucario dying here. Because obviously Gardevoir dies to spike anyways, it's probably just always better to do that and then go into Rotom. Or excuse me, Clodsire. Yeah. Also, based on this Earthquake damage, Jacksonville Jigglypuff should now know that Clodsire is not unaware, because obviously it did more damage than it was supposed to with Earthquake. So they should now know that it's Water Absorb. I get that they probably didn't realize it, but based off that damage, you can calc and see that that +1 actually did more damage than it was supposed to, meaning you know that now this is Water Absorb. I also think going hard Jolteon here for Jacksonville Jigglypuffs is not punishing enough for Clodsire, because obviously you become Tera Fire. It does not matter because Clodsire will, especially behind screens, it's just going to recover up all the hits. So definitely Garchomp here is a way better play because you can spam Earthquake. Another thing is, I think I've talked about this with Ottawa Donphan, a couple other players, especially when you can, you know, your light screens are gone and you know you're about to be taking more damage. Always recover up if your opponent is letting you. You know, obviously if they're showing signs that they're willing to sack this mon, always recover when you can, especially since you know you're going to be below half health and you're taking less than half damage. Always a good opportunity to recover there, because now we see if Clodsire was able to recover off, it'd be much better for it in the future, because then it can come in on more hits, and it's less afraid of Azumarill in the future. Good sack here with the Gardevoir. Although I think, like, you know, Rotom Fan probably isn't that bad. Maybe even Spidops isn't that bad, but good sack here. Sorry. What turn am I on? Yeah, turn 20, I'm sorry. Turn 20 here, Dragon Claw into the Will-O-Wisp. I think for Jacksonville Jigglypuffs, Rotom-Fan has no way of gaining back its health. It is going to set up Reflect and Light Screen, but going Azumarill here is bad because Rotom-Fan already showed signs that it had Will-O-Wisp. Unless this thing, I mean, no, this thing was Citrus Berry. So definitely it's setting up Reflect again, and then it's going to Will-O-Wisp you the following turn. I definitely think just staying in with Garchomp, continuously going for Dragon Claw, getting off the chip is pretty important. But I do understand that potentially you're keeping Garchomp around to deal Earthquake damage with Clodsire, which does make sense. Yeah, since Clodsire is actually Water Absorb, it's a bit harder for Azumarill. So potentially keeping Garchomp here was... Trying to keep Garchomp here healthy was not a bad play. But then again, like, you ended up Aqua Jetting Clodsire in the future, so I don't think at this point you knew that it was Water Absorb, so I definitely think in your mindset, Garchomp staying in there was very fair. Excuse me. Turn 21, it should always be Play Rough here, because ultimately Clodsire is always slower than you, especially since, like, even after Spikes damage, I mean, Play Rough won't be doing a lot, but yeah, after a Play Rough, then you'll kill it with Water Move, or you could just continuously spam Play Rough. I don't know the calc exactly, but you know, at least you get to see the damage. Aqua Jet here is definitely not the play. You definitely want the most damage possible on this Rotom. Rotom also going for Volt Switch here. I think Will-O-Wisp is also not a bad play, because you basically just absolutely cripple Azumarill too. Here, good switch on, I mean, Clodsire did end up being Water Absorb, as I said before. Jacksonville Jigglypuff previously should have known this based off the EQ damage with Tropius. But yeah, also here, when Scizor does come out, and, you know, Clodsire is trying to 1v1 this with Stone Edge. Anytime Clodsire is about to go below half, so this turn, turn 25, Clodsire should always recover because they're about to be over low health. They need to go back up to full. It just plays things way less risky. Even here, again, you should always recover because you're about to be lower health again. And then we see, like, even why, you know, Aerial Ace was doing 32 before. This was a roll to kill you, and then you definitely lose this game. At this point, Clodsire could still definitely just recover off this damage. It was very lucky that you lived here on 1, but you should always keep recovering as long as your opponent is doing less damage than half. Especially now, like, if you were back at full health, you at least could be at full health, and then once the Reflect is gone, just go Rotom. I mean, like, or even potentially sack the Spidops, but sack the Spidops to go Rotom, and then Rotom can, you know, go for Volt Switch or something. Because I think low-key Clodsire, I don't know, maybe between Rotom-Fan and Clodsire, you just win. It would have been a hard play because I don't know how much Rotom takes. Yeah, maybe even during the Reflect, you probably switch. Once you recover up enough, you probably go Rotom and threaten with a burn. I think that's probably the better play. So you can cripple a Scizor, hopefully. Or at least get off some good damage with Volt Switch. Yeah. Yeah, I do think also letting Claude die here, always to go Rotom. Potentially you live too. I don't know the calc by heart, but this is like not stab. I mean, I know it's Ignition, but like it is resisted. So it'd be 90 base. I mean, it'd be close, but I think if you're defensive, you might live it. Turn 28, when Garchomp comes out and starts going for crunches, your highest damaging move is always Dragon Claw, so I do think Dragon Claw is better here. I do think that you're probably going for defense drops, but again, Dragon Claw is always highest damaging move. Turn 34. So I do think when this crunch happened on the Reflect, I don't think it really mattered because, I mean, we can think about the turns here. So crunch does 12%, body slam does 22%, and then you take another 13%. So right here you would take, let's see, wait, was this damage based on already the defense drop? Yeah, it was. Okay. So you'll take another 12% and then another 13%. So you're taking 25 from here, meaning you have 12% left. And then once this thing dies, you know, Choice Band Scizor comes out and, you know, it spams Aerial Ace. It definitely kills the Spidops 100%, and it definitely outspeeds. And then it probably would have been a little bit closer because Scizor, you know, then probably has to switch out in Rotom-Fan. But honestly, like, Rotom-Fan has no way of dealing damage to it besides Volt Switch. So maybe you can just win between Scizor just going for Aerial Ace, and then like I know Zoomerl can live one from Volt Switch from this amount of HP, so maybe Play Rough. It probably would have been a bit closer, but also even to like make it less closer, you could probably switch out Scizor after you kill the Spidops. Go Zoomerl, try to like get off Play Rough, and then you go Scizor and do whatever highest damaging move you have to kill the Rotom. Because I mean, at what was it, 14%? I mean, Bullet Punch doing 14% is still really good damage, especially like I mean, it was able to get 8%, so it would have been at 22%. Azumarill has to get off a little bit of chip, but I think it would have been fine because Azumarill gets off a Play Rough and then it gets off on an Aqua Jet if it's slower, which I think it was at some point. But I don't think the crit mattered as much as you probably thought. The Scizor definitely kills Spidops with an Aerial Ace there. It can always come back in on Stealth Rocks. 21%. Okay, so no, it would have to be, well, no, Azumarill can probably come out and kill Spidops, right? And then you just go Scizor in the end. Yeah, for sure. So hold on. The Spidops would be at 13%, meaning you just go Azumarill. Azumarill always outspeeds Spidops, so then you just go for Play Rough, you kill it, and then Rotom Fan comes out. It's at 22%. Even the Reflect Up, you Play Rough there into an Aqua Jet, you probably do enough damage where Scizor comes out and then it Bullet Punches or whatever highest base power move. Because this thing is not fast, so as long as you check that Scizor outspeeds, you know, maybe even 2 Bullet Punches probably does it. I don't know though. It's probably a lot closer than I think, actually. But yeah, I think there's some way of doing it with the Azumarill coming in on Spidops, killing it with a Play Rough, Rotom Fan come out, check to see if Azumarill is faster, potentially just go for, I think you always spam Play Rough there, because if they Will-O-Wisp you, I mean, you Will-O-Wisp, I don't know. I mean, I know for a fact you live 1 Volt Switch. I don't know. At Rotom being at 22%, even behind Reflect, it probably is not strong enough to take on a combination of Azumarill doing damage and then Scizor doing damage. So, I don't know. Again, I personally think that crit didn't matter, but yeah, maybe if it did, I don't think it did though. I'm gonna say with my loose professional opinion, it didn't matter. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. All right, next up we have a very competitive match here. The Kingston Kleavors against the Marvel Miniors. Their rosters again are not like up to date. They're up to date with week 7, not week 6. But yeah, change of events. Marfall's got rid of Glacier. Kingston picked it up and then made it its Terra Captain. But Marvel Miniors now has Lycanroc Dusk with as their Terra Captain now, which is definitely scary too. But now it's time to see who Glacier actually belongs to. Whose side is it really on? We are going to see Kingston Kleavor in the top right bring Tinkatuff, Toxapex, Hawlucha, Glacier, Umbreon, and Kleavor, while Marvel's Miniors bring Lycanroc Dusk, Slowking, Galar, Ursaluna, Electros, Klefki, and Cyclizar. So, Electros is going to be lead into Tinkatuff. Tinkatuff immediately going to go for a knockoff, get off Electros's leftovers as Electros goes for a discharge, gets the para as well, and does decide to U-turn out into Ursaluna as Tinkatuff decides to go for Stealth Rock. Then we're going to see an Earthquake out on Ursaluna to just basically take out the Tinkatuff as Hawlucha comes in, goes for a Bulk Up, very ballsy play as Ursaluna stays in for a Body Slam. That's decent damage, but ultimately this Hawlucha would be winning the Bulk Up 1v1 as it does have Roost as well. Hawlucha is going to switch out here on the Klefkis. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. Ursaluna switched out into Klefki. Hawlucha is going to switch out because of the Klefki. Klefki going for Switcheroo, switching a Lagging Tail for the Rocky Helmet on the Toxapex, and then proceeds to go for Spikes. But we see Infestation on Toxapex to 1v1 the Klefki. As now Klefki is going to get up all of its Spikes, but we are going to see Surf Infestation basically kill Klefki, which is such a cool set. As well as like potentially if you know, if it tricked a Scarf or something instead of Lagging Tail would have been pretty interesting too. Because then this set, I don't know, would have worked. Maybe just keep spamming Infestation, it probably does work. Because it looked like Klefki had no damaging moves there. So we are going to see Cyclizar come out. Actually goes for a taunt, really good play. by Marfalls to prevent the Baneful Bunker. Next turn, we're actually going to see a really good switch. Scizors going for Rapid Spin. Such a good play to get rid of Stealth Rock's Kleavor. Also gets its Heavy Duty Boots knocked off, which is really powerful because Spike, all 3 layers of spikes are up. Stone Axe coming out, taking 41%. Rocks go back up. U-turn from Cyclizar out into Slowking Galar. As we see Kleavor go for a Swords Dance. It looking real scary right now. Slowking switches out into Electros to scout for the Night Slash. And it is Night Slash and takes out the Electros. Very, very scary. Lycanroc Dust coming out, threatening out the Kleavor with an Excel Rock, obviously. Which Toxapex does take, but because there's no Rocky Helmet anymore, there's no chip resistance. And Lycanroc is Tera Psychic with Psychic Fangs doing hella damage. We are now going to see Glacier come out, Heavy Duty Boots, and threaten out Lycanroc. Slowking comes out, Glacier showing Terra Ground as it goes for an Icicle Crash. Huge damage on the Slowking, by the way. We're going to see Slowking try to slack off this damage, but Terra Blast obviously doing more than half. Very, very scary. And unfortunately, Slowking is going to get off some chip damage with Psyching and then dies to a Terra Blast. Very close match, very scary from here. Cyclizar comes out, going to go for a knockoff to take off Glacier's Heavy Duty Boots. Umbreon comes out, another knockoff to take off its Covert Cloak, and then it's going to taunt the Umbreon to prevent Wish from setting up, and then following that it's going to U-turn out into Ursaluna. Umbreon's going to start spamming Dark Pulse for some decent chip, but now that Ursaluna is out, it is going to be able to take down Umbreon with 2 Earthquakes actually. Yeah, Umbreon also going for the Wish. I mean, it matters for Glacier, of course. We are going to see Ursaluna go for Body Slam Paralysis and actually gets it. And the Paralysis immediately, so Ursaluna doesn't die. But the Wish is really coming in clutch for Glacier. Does get backed up to more HP. Ursaluna is getting more chip, unfortunately. 40% is nothing to laugh at. Icicle Crash going down. Glacier now 45%. Cyclizar needs to come out to get off that little bit of chip, so Lycanroc can clean up. We're going to see knockoff on the Glacier here. Glacier does get paralyzed, and then a Rapid Spin for Cyclizar. Glacier then goes for a close combat and kills, and now we see, can Lycanroc clean up this late game? Lycanroc obviously outspeeds here, kills Glacier with a Psychic Fangs. Hawlucha comes out. Hawlucha going for a Brave Bird only does 56%. Lycanroc also killing it with the Psychic Fangs, and then finally a timeout at the end. Crazy. Time was like literally 10 to 5 seconds for everyone. We do allow timers. It's agreed upon by the players, as long as, like, if they don't want to have the timers on, that's fine, but as long as one person wants the timer on, it can be on. So really close match. I do want to talk about the ending that people kept saying, or I think there was a discussion that if Kleavor was actually defensive, so it could have lived in Excel Rock, but it actually could not. People did forget. I calc this myself. Lycanroc, even if it's just like 252 Jolly, like with no uninvested, like no boosting item, Excel Rock does, if Kleavor is like max defense, it does like, you know, 40 something percent, like 40 to 50 I think is the roll, or something around there. But because Kleavor has its Heavy Duty Boots knocked off, it comes in, it takes 25% from spikes, so it's at 28% and then guarantees die to Excel Rock. So this actually was a guaranteed victory for Marvel Falls Miniors at this point. But really close game. Epic battle for week 6. Looking like this might be, you know, definitely a potential matchup for the playoffs to look out for. So if this one was close, the next one's going to be even closer. But I do have some slight reviews of this battle, but like they're literally all late game. This battle was really, like, played really well. No major misplays. I think the only thing, all of this was fine. I do think I also caught one thing. I wish Umbreon was Foul Play instead of Dark Pulse, but maybe there's something specific that Dark Pulse was needed for. Turn 27, when Umbreon dies here, I do think Hawlucha is the better play instead of Glacier. Just because obviously Glacier threatens out Ursaluna, but also you need Glacier healthy for the Lycanroc endgame. Because Kleavor's Heavy Duty Boots are knocked off, it dies to Excel Rock. Hawlucha does not kill Lycanroc in 1 because it's now, you know, Tera Psychic. So you need Glacier in the late game to at least take 1 hit from Lycanroc. So I do think Hawlucha is a better option, at least to get off close combat is pretty powerful. Especially since, you know, if Lycanroc does switch in on the close combat, then potentially I would think Hawlucha could live 1 Accelerock, and then you could go for Brave Bird and get it to enough chip where maybe you can clean up with Glacier between the last few. But it does depend on the Hawlucha set. I think if I was looking at the Hawlucha sets, if it's 252 attack, close combat does at least like 67 to 70 something%. But obviously if it's uninvested, I think it's like a roll of like 56 to, it was like, I don't know, if it's like 56 to like 63 where like has a chance to kill. So I do understand why they probably didn't go Hawlucha, because it was like a bulk up roost set. So it probably doesn't have like fully invested attack EVs. As well as I was looking at Ursaluna being like some HP but not like max defense, which this one definitely looks to be like somewhat offensive, or somewhat like specially defensive. I think I was looking at least 252 HP, but I'm not for certain. This paralysis definitely, I think, maybe costed the game, because I'm assuming, I mean, they're gonna be at 85%. This thing would be dead, and then obviously like Cyclizar has to come in, and then it definitely has to knock off here. That's why I think another out here is when Cyclizar comes in. I actually think another out here is to switch and potentially sack Kleavor, then go Hawlucha, threaten this thing with a close combat. I mean, you are slower, but like realistically they have nothing to hit you with, and you just threaten them with the close combat and then, like, you know, 1 or 2 shot them. And then between the last little bit of Hawlucha going for a Brave Bird, I would assume it can live an Accelerock. Gets out the Brave Bird, Glacier is left. It still has, I mean, I don't know the roll for certain because I don't know the highest damaging move on Lycanroc. I assume it might be Psychic Fangs, but Glacier has decent defense, so it would have to be, I mean, Glacier at 45%, I don't know. It's potentially an out. I don't know the calcs off the top of my head. I'm not going to spend the time looking at it. Same, this is 252 HP. I would think it could live 1. I really think it could live 1, especially since it's ground type. I mean, it's not super effective against the Cellrock. I mean, Psychic Fang is probably the strongest move. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe, I mean, Stone Edge doesn't make contact, so it probably has Psychic Fangs. But yeah, the paralysis definitely played a really, really big part here, for sure. But yeah, really, really good game. Potentially the Hawlucha play would have made it closer, but yeah, I'm not sure. It's very iffy there, but a really good play. Really good game between both these players. So yeah, without further ado, let's move on to the next one. All right, for the final match of week 6, we have the Wailing Wailords against the Ottawa Donphans. Wailing Wailords with the team in the top right. They also got rid of Alolan Muck for Diancie for the final week. So they still have Alolan Muck for this week in this match. Yeah, they decided to bring Great Tusk, Raichu, Skeledirge, Altaria, Ditto, and Muck-Alolan, while Ottawa Donphans decided to bring King Gambit, Donphan, Mimikyu, Vaporeon, Rotom, Frost, and Greedent, actually, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's get right into it. Donphan is the lead for Ottawa Donphans. Altaria coming out. Ottawa setting up Stealth Rocks. Altaria setting up Tailwind. Altaria defogging the rocks away, but then taking a huge Ice Spinner to the face and just knocking out Altaria. Great Tusk is going to come out. Does have the booster energy for attack. Throws off an Ice Spinner, doing heavy damage to Ottawa Donphans. We're going to see another Ice Spinner come out as Vaporeon as a switch in. Still takes decent chip from that low key. So now we're going to see a close combat come out and actually one-shot the Vaporeon because Great Tusk is a beast. Mimikyu does decide to come out, threaten out the Great Tusk into Skeledirge. Mimikyu does go for Swords Dance, but of course, Skeledirge is Tera Water as well as it is unaware. And it's going to be taking a lot less damage, and it does get Will-O-Wisp, which is very unfortunate. We're now going to see Greedent as the switch-in. Skeledirge getting up a Torch Song, getting +1. We are going to see why Greedent switch in, because it does have Facade, hoping for a Will-O-Wisp here, but Torch Song is just doing too much damage where Wailing Wailords is going to keep spamming it, as well as slack off the damage. So Facade is ultimately not doing anything to Greedent, and Greedent is about to be unfortunately sacked here. Greedent is trying to get off a little bit of chip, but Wailing Wailords is doing what they should do, which is as soon as they get low HP, recover back up, especially if their opponent is sacking Greedent. So you see Rotom Frost come out, threatening SKELEDIRGE with a Thunderbolt, and actually doubles out into Donphan. That's such a beast mode play. Ditto actually transforming into Donphan. We're going to see Rotom Frost come out on the Ice Spinner, so it is resisted. Now Rotom Frost threatening Ditto, just actually one-shots with the Blizzard. Very good play. Great Tusk coming back out. This thing is a threat for sure. Mimikyu is the switch in on the Iron Head, does take the Disguise. Is able to do, I assume, a little bit of chip before it dies, hopefully. We see Tera Fire. Wow. Oh no. Damn, Tera Fire would have been so dope to go on the Will-O-Wisp. Oh, that would have been a... Yo, that could... Wow. Okay, very interesting. Okay. We do see Mimikyu get off a little bit of damage with Play Rough, but unfortunately it is going to die to 2 Iron Heads. Yeah, Great Tusk gets the kill there. Now we see Rotom Frost come back out, obviously threatening this thing. Kills the Great Tusk with a Shadow Ball, which is really huge, meaning this will be a lot closer match. Donphan is the sack to SKELEDIRGE because Rotom Frost is looking like it's scarfed in some manner. Rotom Frost going for a Thunderbolt is still unfortunately not enough, but Final Torch Song, potentially King Gambit can do it here. If they go for Sucker Punch and potentially win, but they do not. SKELEDIRGE goes for the Torch Song and kills the King Gambit, meaning it's a 3-0 for the Wailing Wailords. So let's get into the review of this match. Turn 3 for Wailing Wailords, you definitely need to scout for Ice Spinner because this is definitely a very common thing for Donphan to have sometimes for flying and dragon types. So yeah, losing your Altaria on one turn is definitely not a good idea, so I definitely think scouting here, potentially going you know, SKELEDIRGE or maybe even Ditto so you can scout the sets. Probably SKELEDIRGE is a better play, and then you just Tera Water on the ground type move, because you could definitely 1v1. Turn 4 here, after you set up the Stealth Rocks, I actually think potentially sacking Donphan here is pretty good, specifically because Ottawa's team is very weak to Great Tusk, meaning you want the full health Vaporeon to take the close combat. I would assume Vaporeon can take this close combat if it's at full. If it can't, I would actually be super shocked, because I mean, doing 85% is insane. But yeah. Also, I do like that Donphan actually set up Stealth Rocks there, because most likely if Altaria had defog, more than likely Great Tusk does not have defog, so I do think that's a good play. So here's I think probably the best play by far is bringing in Mimikyu on the Great Tusk. It obviously threatens it out. And I also like that Ottawa decided to bring Swords Dance this week instead of Trailblaze like they normally do other weeks. I think it's a really good idea. The only problem is in this matchup, for you here, it's always best to Shadow Call, actually. So if it's Muck, that's a good play on your opponent, but it's always best for you to Shadow Claw here, because if they do switch, you at least get really good damage on SKELEDIRGE. As well as like your Swords Dance here doesn't work because SKELEDIRGE is unaware. You know, I think you even acknowledge that, I think, after the battle in the notes. So there's no reason to start setting up with Mimikyu until the SKELEDIRGE is weakened or it's gone. So yeah, again, there's no reason to Swords Dance here because SKELEDIRGE is always going to be the play. So if you have Shadow Claw, definitely should go for it. So I think it's like Swords Dance, Shadow Sneak, Play Rough, and I would assume Shadow Claw. I think that's really all you need. But yeah, Shadow Claw would have done a decent amount of damage here, as well as I didn't even realize when watching this battle that you're Tera Fire. I think actually this turn going for Tera Fire is actually a really good play because you're immune to the Will-O-Wisp, which is what you do later on, you Tera Fire. But I think, you know, your opponent does want to Will-O-Wisp you if they have it, so Tera Firing here is actually really good. And you also take resisted Torch Songs now, but you basically would have taken a lot less damage there. And then especially whoa, and then once they're Tera Water, they probably don't have Tera Blast. They may, because they're Slack Off, Will-O-Wisp, Torch Song, maybe they're Tera Blast, but also because they're now Water type, you probably can do a little bit more damage with Play Rough now. But yeah, Would have been pretty interesting if Terrifier there, but also I don't think you really want to take on SKELEDIRGE with Mimikyu because I think you easily lose that 1v1 if you don't have a super effective move. So that Will-O-Wisp is unfortunate though, because I definitely think if you stayed in Terrified, it'd be a really good play of making sure that you don't get Willowed. I do think turn 8 here, if you're gonna switch out into Greedent, I think potentially sacking Donphan first, potentially, because now that this thing isn't fire anymore. I mean, Donphan could be good for the Lowland Muck though, so I understand the reasoning behind keeping it, but I do think like going hard Greedent here, your opponent wanted to Will-O-Wisp Mimikyu because they know that like Mimikyu can be a threat, but Greedent really isn't known to be a threat, as well as, you know, this is a freaking SKELEDIRGE with Unaware, you can't set up on it, and it has Slack Off, so this thing basically will never want to Will-O-Wisp you. It's always going to want to Torch Song you because it does the most damage, as well as they get plus like, you know, 3 or 4 special attack when they do it this way. Versus like Will-O-Wisping you is really not that important to them, but I do like the Facade set. I think this set was actually fire, but unfortunately it did not end up working out. I do think turn 14, the double from Rotom Frost and the Donphan was a huge play for the Ottawa Donphans. I really like that play. I do think the Ditto sack here is a little bad by Wailing Wailords. I think Ditto is really useful, especially for Kingambit in the endgame. But it's fine. The sack is also fine because it allows you to bring in Great Tusk, and then, you know, you threaten with the close combat. But I do like the Iron Head coverage as a middle ground between not having to go for close combat there. I mean, also turn 18, this wasn't a bad use of Tera because obviously you are now taking resistant damage from the Iron Head. But I think earlier on it would have been cooler to prevent the burn. But this was also technically a good use of Tera because now you're you take less damage from the Iron Head. So turn 23, the final play. This is definitely a 50-50 for Ottawa Donphans because SKELEDIRGE can obviously slack off on you, which is really, really scary, as well as you get outsped here. So I definitely understand why they probably decided to go for a manual move, because their opponent this entire time had mostly been slacking off, but in this later portion, it seemed like I low-key think that probably Wailing Wailords needed to recover here, depending on the spread of this. I mean, maybe I'm definitely underestimating Kingambit and you always Torch Song here, but definitely if you Sucker Punch here as Ottawa Donphan, this becomes a lot closer play, because I'm pretty sure Raichu just dies to a Sucker Punch outright, and then Muckalolan you have to 1v1, but potentially with Iron Head, as long as they don't have Drain Punch, potentially, you know, Fire Punch, Iron Head's going to be doing at least a 2 KO against Muckalolan. So I think if this was, you know, it's a hard 50-50 to make for sure, but if this Sucker Punch actually went through, I think the game, I mean, Raichu's definitely dead. It's just whether Muckalolan has the coverage to kill Kingambit. So yeah, very good game though, definitely an exciting game, and I do believe this is the first win for Wailing Wailords this season. So congratulations, very good game. And yeah, of course, that's going to be the games for this week. I do want to go over playoffs real quick. So yeah, we have the X division, we have the Y division, we have all the 6 weeks. So for the X division, it looks like everything is pretty much settled in. Marble Falls is looking to be the #1 seed, which they get a bye, and then Kingston Kleavors will more than likely go up against Toronto Staraptors. Because the differential is, unfortunately, unless it was like crazy Jacksonville 6-0'd someone and then Toronto Staraptors got 6-0'd, then it could change like 3-4 and then 3-4, and potentially it's close for like this little bit, but for the most part, X division is locked in these 3. For the Y division though, looking very interesting. Sonoran being the top seed, Santa Cruz obviously looking like it also will be, unless they lose, it actually gets a little dicey. I think between these 3, potentially Mojave Cacturnes could also sneak in here to get playoffs by here, but right now it is neck and neck. Los Angeles Pelippers against Pittsburgh Scizors, and they both have a crazy match next week. Los Angeles Pelippers actually taking on Marble Miniors, and Pittsburgh Scizors taking on Kingston Kleavors, which is probably, you know, some of the best people in the Kalos Division. So definitely going to be some tough matches. Really interested to see what happens. Of course, you know, if Los Angeles Pelippers wins, obviously that's really good for them. But if they both lose, technically, if Los Angeles doesn't lose as bad as Pittsburgh, they could still be in it. But of course, if Los Angeles loses and Pittsburgh wins, then they're obviously out of playoffs. But it's definitely neck and neck for this Y division, which is really, really hyped to see. So yeah, I think that's going to be it for me today. Again, sorry that these are a little bit late. I've been very busy. If you are enjoying the PBO, stay tuned. We're going to have season 4 and probably, like, you know, after DLC. We're going to take a decent break. But yeah, if you are interested in the PBO, if you're having a good time, if you're enjoying these game reviews, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe for more in the future. Without further ado, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Peace.